Hello and welcome to MHA Digital Communities. My name's Katie and today we're going to be making a painting inspired by seashells. Before we start this painting, I'm just going to talk through the materials that you'll need. You'll just need some ordinary watercolours, some watercolour brushes, a pencil and a rubber, and some water, and if you've got a sponge that can be quite handy. I've also got something called a Beryl fine line pen. It can just really be any black felt tip. This particular one is quite nice because when you use it to outline your drawing and then you put water on it, you get this little interesting pink tone that comes off it. But different felt tip pens kind of water down in a slightly different way. So that's kind of how we use it. Okay, but to start off with then, we're going to learn to draw some shells. You don't have to have shells in front of you. It can be helpful to have a picture of some shells that you like, but you don't have to have that. I'm going to teach you how to draw the shells from scratch just by using basic shapes. This design here is a composition of an arrangement of 5 different shaped shells, and then surrounded by little areas of seaweed and colour. So that's what we're going to be working on first. I'd like to start off with the easiest shape first, which is this little scallop looking shell, a small shell. And basically all shells of this type really come from a circle base. So if you take your pencil, and you can either draw around something circular or you can draw a freehand circle and draw that quite lightly. So I'm just going to arrange that here. So I'm just going to draw that quite lightly, which means you just don't press very hard with the pencil. Okay. But for the purposes of this video, I'm going to press a little bit harder just so you can see the circle. So if you start off with a circle, you can take your ruler. Sorry, I didn't mention the ruler before. If you've got a ruler, that's quite useful. You can take your ruler and draw a line down the middle, just so you've got an idea, a sense of where the middle is. And then what I do is I lightly draw a line up to about halfway, and then I just curve it off from the middle, and I keep going. I just follow that right to the edge, and then I do the same thing on the other side, but still following that slight curve. Okay, now it's still quite circular and I want to just make it a bit more shell-like, so I'm going to just go around the edge, do a bit of a wavy line and just extend it out a little bit on one side. And there I have a shell on its side. I've got my rubber so I can rub out that initial line. Just take a little bit of that away. We're going to be going over it in paint and with the pen, so these lines underneath don't really matter. Sometimes in art it's actually nice to see these what I call construction lines underneath. They just add something to the drawing. So that's what we've got there. Right, for the next one, I'm going to go for this long, elongated shape. And this one again, I'm just going to put my ruler around here and draw a line. My particular line is going to be about 12 centimetres long. So I've got that line. And then I'm going to basically make a triangle shape. So I'm going to draw another little line, so like a T shape. Yep, like a T shape, so 3, and then I'm going to join those quite lightly to make myself a bit of a triangle. So I've got the basis for this shape, and now I'm going to alter it to look like this shell. So along the top line, I'm just going to create a slightly wavy line down to the end, and then at the bottom line I'm going to again have some more waves. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6. So this is really meant to be an impression of a shell rather than an accurate depiction of a realistic shell. It just has like the shapes and the feel of a shell. So you mustn't worry if it's not, you know, a perfect shell shape, that's fine. Then I'm going to just shape along the top here, just drawing a bit of a swirl, a little bit of a shorthand for a shell shape. And I'm just going to rub out that particular straight line, because the straight lines don't really belong in nature. You very rarely see straight lines. So, and then I'm just going to divide up the length of the shell with some curved lines. Like these, and that's my second shell. Okay, for the next one, I'm going to have a go at doing this lovely starfish. And again, I'm going to take my circular object just to help me to draw a circle. And I'd quite like this circle on mine to perhaps be a little bit bigger, so I'm just going to gently just sketch around a little bit. See how we go. Okay, and then off this kind of circular central area, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different triangles coming off that. I'm going to draw mine freehand, but you could do them with a ruler. So what I'm going to do is just I'm going to put 5 lines. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And then I'm going to take from this outer circle, I'm just going to basically do a gentle line up to the tip. And if you notice, I'm not making them straight or completely even, I'm just kind of balancing them out. You have to remember the starfish is a living, moving creature, so it doesn't have to be perfect. It has to reflect a little bit of that movement. So now that we've got the basic shape, we're just going to refine that shape a little bit more now. So we're going to rub out those initial circles. And I'm actually going to make the legs of it go in a little bit further. So I'm just going to rub out the in a bit further. Make that one a bit longer. Okay, so we've got a starfish-esque shape. The ends of the starfish kind of feet can be a little bit more pointy, so you can just go over those and make them a little bit more pointy, but essentially you've got the basic shapes there. And then I like to go right from the tip and just draw a slightly wavy line. So the technique that we're using in this painting is line and wash, so it's important to be able to see some of the line and to be able to layer that up with some wash. I'm adding a little bit of detail, but not yet, so these details I've drawn in, I'm going to add those when I've finished all the basic shell shapes. So I've got a more complicated shell shape here, and but again, it's still, if you break down any drawing, it's really just a series of basic shapes. So I'm going to just start off here with a basic oval shape. Now I've done that freehand, but there is a trick for drawing an oval, which is to start off by drawing a rectangle. You can draw a rectangle. I'm doing mine freehand. If you wanted, you could do it with a ruler. You draw a rectangle, you draw a line right down the middle, and then so you've got like a window effect. And then you just go from one corner where the lines meet the edge to the next one, and then you curve it around to the next one, like that, and that's how you get your oval, and then you just smooth it at the edges. So that's one way to draw an oval. If you don't want to do it freehand, that's the way to do it. So I've got my basic oval shape, I'm just rubbing that out. And then underneath, I'm adding like a layer, like a stripe, like a band. Going around that, and then under that I'm going to just do another band, which will then turn into this more detailed section like this. Okay, and so we've got one oval, a stripe, and then another bigger band underneath. And then we're going to basically add a series of wave shapes. If you've joined in some of the sessions before, you'll have practiced doing a little bit of wave shapes. It's just adding these structures towards the end. And again, we're trying to get the impression of a shell rather than a very detailed, realistic picture of a shell. We've got just the flavour of a shell and the shell structures. Okay, so there we have that one. And then I always like to have odd numbers instead of even numbers in a composition. It just makes it a little bit more interesting. So for the last one here, I'm just going with a basic triangle shape. And then again, I'm doing my wavy lines at the edge, curving it round with a few stripes there. So that's the basic composition. And now we're going to add in what I call the seaweed or sea grasses around here. And this one, I like to do it in quite a quick and expressive way, and that means that I'm going to do it without trying to not take the pencil off the page while I do it. So I'll start in this corner, and initially I'm just going to do a quick swirl down to there. So I'm just going to do these flowing lines. Like this. So now we're getting the idea of it flowing. Now I'm ready to add a little bit of pencil detail, so I'm going to go in with my pencil and just add a few more lines. So I'm adding a couple of lines, like 2 or 3 lines in between those longer lines. I'm going into the starfish and drawing like a little bit of a broken circle there, and then some little short stripes. So when you're doing this kind of drawing, you are simplifying, you're selecting areas to include and editing them down to almost the simplest image that you can make, really, just less is more again. Here on this more complex looking shell, I'm just going to put in some curvy, so you're slowly drawing a line and curving it, and the curves will suggest a little bit of 3D-ness to the shape. Putting a few lines here and then some here. So okay, and then with the scallop type shell, or with the ridges on there, I'm just going to add again another curvy line across there, like that, and one at the bottom. And that's all of the detail that you would need to make this work. Okay, so now that we've completed the drawing, we're going to go on to the colour layer. Here I've got my 2 jam jars of water. The reason I've got 2 jam jars is because I'm going to use one for the hot colours that the shells are going to be done in, and then one for the cold colours, the blues and greens, for the background. So I'm going to rinse out my brush. I'm going to start off with the background, and I'm going to just have a medium greeny blue. So I'm just going to take some blue, put it in my palette, and I'm just going to start to put a thin layer of wash. And if you notice, I'm not going right up to where the seaweed is, because I want to leave a little bit of a gap where the seaweed is, but then I'm just filling in between the shells and just leaving little areas of white where the white paper can come through. Sometimes it's nice to use the white of the paper and to put in a little bit of green there. Oops, that's gone. So just then I accidentally touched a bit that was a different colour, but the beauty of watercolour is you can actually just get some clean water if you have a clean brush, and you can actually remove the colour that you didn't want, or you can even use a sponge. You can sponge most of it off, so that's fine. Don't rub too much into the paper because it, as you can see, it starts to peel off a little. That's fine. So just some light areas of blue. I'm going to add. And I think it's important when you're trying out these ideas to not worry so much about filling in areas, but think about it as a whole painting with different areas kind of working together. So it's the overall effect that you're trying to look for, not worrying too much about every little detail. So we've got and actually when you work quite quickly, you tend to get a more expressive and a more lively touch to your painting. So sometimes it's useful to just set yourself a time limit, really, so that you don't spend ages and ages and ages on a bit and worrying about it. So it's nice to work quite quickly and put some colour down. So we've got these nice areas of colour. We've also got some patches of white still left that I'm quite keen to keep those in. Just keeps things quite bright. And while that's drying, I'm going to just rinse off my brush, and then I'm going to think about the colours I'm going to use for the next bit. I'm just going to clean off that little palette. Okay, so here we've got some sandy colours, some purpley pink colours. I'm going to start off with a sandy colour. I'm just going to use a slightly smaller brush, and you can always again just sort of test your colours. If you're not sure, just test them on another piece of paper as well. So okay, so I'm going to go in and use a sandy colour. And water it down a bit so it's not too thick. Oops. So as I'm applying this thin layer, as you can see, I can see the pencil underneath, and that's why it's called line and wash, because you can basically see the line. I'm using the other water pot so that I'm trying to keep my hot colours in a separate water pot so that they don't go too green. I might add a tiny bit of orange or red into that section. So that's it. So you've got the combination of the line underneath and the light layer of watercolour over the top. Then I'm going to do the same with the next shell. I might introduce a tiny bit of brown just to vary it a little bit. So for this one, it's good to use your brush in the direction of the general shape of the object. So these bands flow from top to bottom, so I'm using my brush that way. You don't have to, that's just something you can try out. Okay, so here you can see I've got a much heavier amount of paint, but I can still, because it's watercolour, I can still see my lines, so that's just trying to balance it out, even it out. I've got a slightly bit of purple. If you want to ever darken yellow, the best colour to use is purple, which is the complementary colour. So I'm just using a little bit of colour there. Remember that you're going to be bringing these to life with the black pen afterwards, so that's going to make them stand out even more. Okay, now I'm going to go for these two. I'm going to use similar colours. I'm going to use a bluey kind of pink. There's often a bluey pink and an orangey pink, so I'm using the slightly more bluey purpley pink. And I'm going to do, again, following the shape, so from top to bottom. And as I've got that colour mixed, I'm going to go straight onto this shell and just start applying some of that colour as well. This larger area, I'm still going to just go through and down to these longer areas like that, my pink. And while I've still got a little bit of that colour, sometimes it's good just to use it around the painting, then you get to a certain amount a link between the different areas, so that's fine. Now I'm going to go for some more orange, which I'll mix in with a bit of my pink. As long as, so these are very thin layers, and as soon as they've dried, you can see this one's already dried, whereas that one's still wet. So as soon as they've dried, when you then apply another layer over the top, they won't merge together, they'll just happily overlay each other, so that's quite good. So do a bit of that, and I'm not trying to fill in every single part of it. It's okay to have little areas that are still the white of the paper. If you notice on this band here, I'm just going to do a band and I'm just going to leave a little bit of white. So again, that just helps with slightly bringing it to jump out of the page. I've got some following on there, adding some orange stripes. A couple of orange stripes there. And as I've got a bit more orange, I'm just going to add a little bit here and there. Okay, so you just follow that through till you've got a little bit of colour on your shells. And now that we've completed the first part, we're going to now go on to add some different layers, starting off with some shadows. So I'm going to take my paintbrush and mix a little bit of purple. Purple is the colour of choice for shadows. So I've got this pinky red colour, and I'm going to add in a small amount of blue. And if I just test that on here, I might just add a little bit more blue, just darken it up a little bit. I've got a purple, and when I just add some small touches of purple, you can see it adds that extra layer of depth to the colour. I'm going to do just a thin line along here, and then I'm going to go on the right hand side of these little prongs that stick out and just around the end, and it will just lift those off the page, so kind of mimicking the idea of there being a shadow. Just brings it out. I'm going to do the same over here, so just underneath this shell. Add this layer of purple and a little bit here in between the bands. Then just need a little bit more. Okay, I've got my purple. I'm going to go underneath this shell with this band of purple. And underneath the starfish. So when I say underneath, I mean underneath each one of the arms. I'm not going to do the top two, I'm just going to do the bottom two because I'm just trying to make it so that it's... There we go. And that's just helped to lift those shells slightly off the page. And now I'm going to add the next layer, which is going to be the felt tip layer. So I've got my black fine liner pen here, and I'm going to go back to those original lines that I laid down, and I'm going to basically go along and do these very scribbly little leaf effects. So they're pretty much just a couple of little scribbles like that, moving quite quickly, not being too detailed or precious about it. So I'm doing some to the right and some to the left of my line. You can sort of redraw the line again if you wish, like that. Obviously this works well as we've already completed the first washes earlier and all of those colours are dry, so it's not a problem at the moment. It's not, you can't really work into something that's already wet with a pen. It will just make your job a bit more difficult. So we've got these little areas of seaweed. I'm going to just add one here. And if you notice on some of these areas of white, I've just added in some small little areas of dots. Just gives you a little bit of extra texture. And again, it's really a suggestion of the kinds of textures you get in the sea, obviously such as sand. And it just makes it a little bit more interesting to look at. You can sort of take your time and make those a bit more close together, etc. And it also creates basically a continuity between the different elements, so it just kind of links the different areas of the painting together. So I've got all of those. Then I'm going to outline my shells. And again, here you don't have to be doing a thick outline. That I'm doing a slightly light outline with some broken elements. The lines are slightly broken. It doesn't all have to be smooth all the way around, although you can do that. And that's going to lift again your shapes right off the page. And you're trying to outline really just the very main structures, so the original pencil outlines that we did at the beginning, the outside and the main structures, rather than every single area of detail. And this gives you an opportunity to just define areas like the ridges on the scallop, tie those together. You can still see the pencil through that, so that's fine. We're going over to this one here. I'm just going to again just define the main structures. Notice I'm holding my pen sort of higher up In a way, it just gives you the feel of a bit more of a paintbrush rather than right down here. I quite like to hold it further away, but it depends what you are comfortable with. Okay, just add some more. So it's got that drawn element. And now I'm just going to add a little bit of green to my seaweed. So I've got my yellow and some blue. So I'm just basically dabbing some little bit areas of green here. And what you'll see is, obviously, as I'm dabbing the green onto the black fine liner pen, it starts to be a little bit of an effect. Some of it starts to dissolve, and that's okay, that's all right, for that watery effect. And then obviously now you've got black pen, now you have to be a little bit brave now and go into some little areas of where the black pen has been, just a tiny little bit. Just add a bit of water, just so that you can enjoy seeing the effect of some of the black pen kind of merging, so diluting a little bit. You don't have to do it all over, but just here and there you can just see what happens with the black pen as you add a little bit of water. Just softens in the edges. And I've got a little bit of green left, so I might just add a little bit of green here and there just to liven up the colours. And that is the completed painting. This is the last one on the series on the seashore. I hope you've enjoyed it. Thanks for joining me.